I quite like art because art, aside from it being beautiful, art challenges us to think different. Sometimes art can really tick you off, and that's okay. I mean, I'll never forget. It always makes the news when, Barnett Newman's Voice of Fire gets, bought by the National Gallery of Canada for $400 million kajillion dollars. And like, well, what is that? Is that worth 400 kajillion million? I don't know. How much did that, what's in it? How that Jackson Pollock cost? A kajillion. Is it worth a kajillion? I don't know. Once my wife and I went to the Modern Art Gallery here, and we saw this great big thing of just gray paint, and we argued about it from the moment we left the museum until we got home, and even over tea continued fighting about this painting. This piece of painting that had the effect that it made at least one couple fight for about an hour. And there's more to the value of art than that, which we'll talk to my next guest about. But he is a photographer who's put together an exhibit called In the Playroom, and it's ruffling some parental feathers. His name is Jonathan Hobin, and he joins me now. Hi, Jonathan. Welcome to CJAD.
Hi, Dan. How's it going?
Fantastic. How are you?
Good. A little shaky now.
Nonsense. This is going to be this will be painless. But
I'm sure it will be. It's just I've been getting calls all day, and people are really excited and juiced about this series, and I'm excited too, but taken aback a bit.
By the negative reaction?
No, not really. I mean, the negative reaction, everyone wants to talk about it. The truth is that no one has actually come forward and directly talked to me and say anything negative. It's all blogs. Whenever someone's talking anonymously, they love to stir the pot up. But for the most part, people have been extremely excited about the work and extremely thankful for it.
Well, maybe you can since this is through your eyes, you can describe it a little bit. It's called In the Playroom. How many photographs are there?
There's 12 photographs in this part of the series. I plan on continuing the series, but
okay.
For the first showing, 12 seemed like the perfect number for me.
How do you describe it?
I mean, if you want to, simplify it and just say it's kids appearing in a playroom, reenacting some of the major news catastrophes and looming sort of like cultural sort of like things that kind of creep into our subconscious, like those news stories where the images are so pervasive that you just are constantly bombarded with them, and they're kind of inescapable. And it's supposed to demonstrate, or at least suggest, that these images, a bombardment of those images, can really affect our kids. Okay.
So, for example, one of the photographs is entitled "The Twins." Can you describe that for me, so our listeners
have? The twins basically have two little boys who are clearly from different parents. One's darker, one's lighter, and we have two sort of building block towers. One of them has been kind of crushed at the top, and one of the boys is flying a plane into one of the towers, and another one, the blonde boy, has a fire truck, and it's entitled "The Twins." The title's obviously alluding to the Twin Towers, but also alluding to this idea that we as a people have more in common than uncommon from one another, and I think that's something that we forget.
It's funny. I didn't think of that at first when I first looked at this picture, but you're absolutely right. One dark, one light, and you're kind of using children to highlight, well, exactly as you said it. And and we're still in a post 9/11 society where there's this tension now between cultures. Mm-hmm. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, first of all, these two children that I photographed, I actually photographed those kids probably about 3 years ago. So they actually probably are born in a post 9/11 world, and those images, as we all know, we've seen them time and time again, and if we see them, they see them. And I've decided to show them, it's not a political statement, it's more about a statement about kids and the media's effect on children. And I think it's really important to acknowledge what kids see. I'm not drawing a conclusion about what that means. What I'm saying is that, what are you going to do with it? Let's acknowledge that kids see these images, and it's really up to parents and us as a society to continue a dialogue with kids and understand how they see the world.
Well, we're so quick as parents, and I'm guilty of this as well, of trying to shield. And you know what? I think it was Atticus Finch who said it in To Kill a Mockingbird. I try to protect you from all that is ugly in this world, and I don't always succeed.
And I think that our culture now has gone to the extreme, overly politically correct. Like in a previous series that I have called Mother Goose, where this is kind of a continuation of that idea, it also explores the darker side of childhood, and it refers to the real meanings behind nursery rhymes. So I have children reenacting some of the more actual, what the true meanings of some of the nursery rhymes are. And in that sort of a culture, historically, people would scare children so that they wouldn't go in the wrong behavioral path.
Oh,
so
yeah. The Mother Goose stories are horrifying.
Yeah, it's like, if you do this, you will be punished in this way. And that was a tool that parents at that time, especially in a time of illiteracy, would use to kind of educate those kids on some of the morals that they should have. Whereas in our society today, parents tend to take this approach of, if I don't acknowledge it's there, my kids aren't going to see it, or they try to ignore about what's out there because it's just too overwhelming to try to talk to their kids about what that means, since we're trying to process what it means ourselves. So I think it's important to acknowledge that you can't escape it. You can't put your head in the sand. Here it is. I'm putting it in front of you. I'm spelling it out for you. Now what are you going to do? Speaking
with Jonathan Hobin, who's a photographer. His exhibit is called In the Playroom. And now describe this other photograph. I think it's titled Abu Ghraib.
Yeah, it's a reference to the Abu Ghraib prisoner torture. And for me, looking through some of those images, when those images are smuggled out of the prison, I looked at one of those images of a grown man in a black robe with those electrodes, and I just thought, this is terrifying. This is one of those things. First of all, it looks like a Halloween costume, but and I thought about kids and Halloween and how they play dress up and try to emulate some of the creatures that are supposed to be the most horrible things you think of: Dracula, Frankenstein, the Grim Reaper, things like that. And for me, I thought, what kid wouldn't see this image and think, this is the most terrifying thing I can think of? And so, from a kid who's sort of learning and processing about the world around them, what's stopping them from saying, oh, I want to be that character because it's the scariest thing I've seen? And so it's basically, the Abu Ghraib is referring to, it's a Halloween costume dress up where the characters are characters from those photographs smuggled out from Abu Ghraib prison. So it's the title Abu Ghraib is referencing a kid's sort of understanding of that name, maybe interpreting it to reference Halloween as opposed to a prison.
Yeah, I do like the title. Now, there is one photograph that does, I have to admit, kind of weirded me out, called Vegas Wedding.
Oh, okay.
Which one did you think I was going to say?
The Jean Benet image, American Idol.
No, we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
But no, Vegas Wedding. Now, describing it, there's are they now from my vantage point, it looks like two boys.
Mm-hmm. It is.
They're wearing sort of like circusy outfits, the top hats and stuff.
Like a lion tamer outfits. Yeah.
Yeah, and two realistic-looking stuffed tigers.
Yeah.
And they're sitting on the tigers, one behind the other. And one of them looks, I almost hate to put it in these terms, but his eyes are half closed and his mouth is open.
Yeah.
And I am kind of weirded out by this. Can you tell me about this photograph?
Yeah, it's the photograph, Vegas Wedding, is referring to Siegfried and Roy with the lion or the tiger mauling that happened. And that particular image speaks on how the media can also take this somewhat obscure story and turn it into this sensationalized thing. So we see these images and we keep talking about Siegfried and Roy, who are really insignificant in the big scheme of things. But you take the concept of these sort of over-the-top showmen and have one being mauled by their own tiger, and it kind of takes on that meaning. So I picture kids playing with animals and kind of seeing that sort of thing, the circus, and kind of referencing that play. And obviously, the little boy who has his eyes half open, his eyes half open and his mouth kind of open, you can see that there's some blood there, and it's just referencing the mauling. And so I wanted it to kind of become an arresting glance. Like, if you notice, most of the pictures, they have this sort of in-between facial expression. It's saying something, but it's also really vacant. And I feel like that gaze is really important to engage the viewer and really get them to say, what is happening? And I really do find that image and that gaze is really arresting. It makes you pushes you back, and then it pulls you back in again to try to explore what's happening.
So you haven't heard, as you said before, from people who you haven't heard firsthand negative reaction.
No, it's all on blogs. I feel like the way the internet works, where people can keep their anonymity, they're willing to spew anything and everything. And I think that, and it also shows that sort of lack of actual engagement with me in terms of discovering what it is I'm trying to do. People love to express themselves in that way. But in terms of people actually coming to the gallery, or I've even had people track me down and call me at home just to basically congratulate me and tell me how much they appreciate the work. I think there's a lot of people, and the amount of effort it takes to write something on a blog demonstrates the amount of effort that someone, I think, puts into actually thinking about the work. The people who've actually taken the time to call me have really engaged in the work, and I've appreciated that.
I like the pictures because they're disturbing. Mm-hmm. No one came to you and said, yeah, but you use children. You're not supposed to use children in photography. It's sacred.
I've had an email about that where they said, I've had a couple of you say something like, there's nothing new about what you've done. The only difference is you've used kids, which for me is, that's the point. That's the thing that's different. I think that's really important to acknowledge and respect what kids are going through. And without actually, in a photographic sense, representing a kid who is referencing one of these major upsetting news catastrophes, it really does take the photo medium to actually get people to acknowledge that. When they actually see a real child who had to pose for this photograph, it's like that's what it takes for them to finally get it.
I think I get it, and then we'll see if my listeners get it. Jonathan, thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Good luck with the exhibit.